There's a peculiar kind of person who doesn't just enter a room, they feel it. You know the type. The ones who absorb the unspoken tension between two friends, who catch the sadness hiding behind a polite smile, who sense the temperature of a lie before it's even told. The world calls them intuitive, empathic, sometimes even gifted, but they are mistaken. What you carry is not a gift, it's a curse disguised as understanding. Because once you begin to see through the fabric that keeps the rest of the world comfortable, you can never unsee it again. You become the witness no one asks for, the mirror that no one wants to look into. And mirrors, as you'll learn, are rarely loved by those who fear reflection. Watch people long enough and you'll realize they're not talking, they're performing. Each smile rehearsed, each gesture borrowed from the theatre of what's acceptable. The world runs on scripts, not truths. You ask someone how they're doing and they say, "I'm fine," and you both pretend that's enough. You laugh at jokes that don't land. You nod at stories you've already heard. You participate in a collective dream where the goal isn't connection but containment. Yet you, cursed with clarity, can't play along. You see the eyes that flicker in guilt, the wife who flinches when her husband speaks, the colleague whose laugh trembles under loneliness. You see everything, and that's the beginning of your exile. Because what society loves most is blindness dressed as peace. Society is a play that everyone agrees to believe in. Every actor knows their lines, the successful man, the loving mother, the loyal friend. It's an elaborate harmony of masks and mutual lies, and you, unwilling, untrained, step into this theatre and realise it's all cardboard and glue. That's when they turn on you. Not violently, but subtly, with avoidance, with the cold politeness that says, "You make me uncomfortable." Because truth has an odour, and once people smell it on you, they start holding their breath. They don't hate you. They hate the version of themselves that comes alive in your presence, the one without disguise. You haven't betrayed them, you've simply stopped pretending. But in a world built on pretense, that's the greatest betrayal of all. Clarity doesn't make you wise, it makes you dangerous. Not because of what you do, but because of what you see. Awareness, once awakened, is radioactive. It burns through illusion, dissolves comfort, reveals the rotting structures beneath polite smiles. And people sense it. They feel your perception like light through a crack in their armour. You start to notice the distance growing. Friends who once confided in you now deflect. Lovers retreat behind humour. Family members accuse you of overanalyzing. They call it sensitivity, but it's exile wearing perfume. The more you see, the less you belong. The truth isolates by its very nature. It separates those who can bear it from those who need the lie to breathe. Isolation arrives quietly. It doesn't look like loneliness at first. It feels like silence, like you've stepped into another frequency. People still talk to you, still laugh, still include you, but something invisible has shifted. You're no longer with them. You're observing from a few inches behind your own eyes. The conversation sounds scripted. The affection feels conditional. You start to wonder if the world always felt this artificial and you just hadn't noticed. And then the realization hits. Ignorance was not your enemy. It was your protection. Once it's gone, peace leaves with it. That's the paradox of awakening. The clearer your sight, the blurrier your place among the blind. If this truth speaks to you, stay. Here, we don't chase comfort. We chase clarity, the kind that cuts, the kind that frees. Let's talk about the second danger, the choice between truth and silence. When you see something clearly, you face an unbearable dilemma. Do you speak it and risk rejection, or stay silent and betray yourself? Speak, and they'll call you negative, paranoid, dramatic. You'll be accused of creating problems where none exist. Stay silent and you'll begin erasing yourself, molecule by molecule. You'll swallow your own knowing to stay lovable, and in doing so, you teach your mind a cruel lesson. My perception cannot be trusted. That fracture grows quietly, like a fault line under the skin. One day you wake up fluent in the language of self-betrayal, and you call it peace. The human mind is a genius at self-protection. When reality burns too brightly, it invents shades. It calls them optimism, politeness, spirituality. But behind each shade is fear, the terror of seeing life without anesthesia. You've met people like this, smiling through despair, working through collapse, meditating through denial. They call it balance. You call it what it is, avoidance. But remember this, you cannot save someone who loves their mask. They'll destroy the mirror before they remove it. Every truth teller learns this lesson eventually. The truth you offer feels like violence to those who survive on lies. You might believe awareness makes you good. It doesn't. It only makes you responsible. You start feeling the unspoken weight of every room, the sadness that doesn't belong to you, but lives inside you anyway. You walk in fine, you walk out exhausted. It's not fatigue, it's absorption. You've become a vessel for collective emotion, a sponge for psychic debris. Every sigh, every forced smile, every subtle act of repression passes through you like static, and over time, that static starts speaking. You can't tell whether the sadness is yours or borrowed. You become a stranger in your own body, haunted not by ghosts but by the emotional residue of others. The danger isn't just that you feel too much, it's that you forget, where you end and the world begins. You confuse empathy with surrender, love with martyrdom. You start believing your pain is proof of your goodness. But pain isn't virtue, it's just unfiltered perception. You were never meant to carry everyone's storm inside your chest. You only mistook compassion for self-erasure. The world doesn't need you drowning in its waters, it needs you to stand on the shore and see clearly. Because sometimes the most merciful thing you can do is not jump in. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work or lack of sleep. It comes from seeing too much. You notice every unsaid word, every tremor in tone, every disguised resentment wearing the smile of civility. It's not paranoia, it's perception sharpened to the point of pain. You don't mean to carry the world, but it clings to you anyway. People mistake your stillness for strength, unaware that stillness is how you survive the flood. They think you're calm. You're not calm. You're calculating what part of this storm actually belongs to you, and what part you've inherited from everyone who refused to feel their own pain. You start to sense this truth in ordinary places, in the way someone avoids eye contact when you mention honesty, in the sudden drop in energy when you ask a question that digs too deep. People want to be seen, but only to the degree that it doesn't demand transformation. They crave validation, not vision. And once you understand that difference, conversation becomes a kind of performance art, predictable, choreographed, empty of risk. You begin to ache for silence because silence at least doesn't lie. But silence is not peace either. It's a battlefield where your awareness wrestles with your restraint. Soon, you face the second great curse of clear seeing. Everything you understand becomes something you must forgive. You see why people lie, why they betray, why they pretend. You see the architecture of fear underneath it all. You know they're not cruel, they're terrified, and yet that knowledge doesn't make it easier to stay close to them. Because once you understand the reason behind the mask, you can't ever go back to believing the mask itself. You love people for who they could be, while they insist on remaining who they are. That tension is unbearable, the emotional version of holding your breath. You think awareness will make you free, but it often makes you patient instead. You stop reacting, not because you've transcended emotion, but because you've seen the futility of trying to change the unready. You smile more, but it's a smile that hides resignation. You learn to nod through conversations that used to ignite you, because truth spoken to the deaf feels like sacrilege. Eventually, your silence starts to feel heavy, sacred even. It's the only part of you they can't contaminate, and yet, part of you still aches to be understood, to meet another soul who sees without flinching. You start realizing that connection isn't about proximity, it's about shared perception. Most people don't recognize the quiet collapse that happens in the sensitive. The breakdown doesn't look dramatic. It looks like someone who stops explaining, someone who says it's fine and actually means I'm done trying. They withdraw, not because they hate the world, but because the world feels allergic to truth. The irony is cruel. The ones who could help most are the ones who are too tired to keep speaking. You stop asking to be seen because you realize no one can see you if they can't bear to see themselves. That's the moment awareness shifts from blessing to burden. If you've made it this far, you're not like most people. You don't run from the mirror, you stare back. This space is for those who'd rather face the darkness than live a beautiful lie. Let's talk about the third danger, projection. When people sense that you see them, really see them, something primal activates. They start defending, then attacking. They can't separate your perception from accusation. You become the villain of their unevolved narrative. You're judgmental. You're dramatic. You always overthink. What they're really saying is, you make me conscious and I hate how it feels. So they turn the lens outward. They shoot the messenger, not the message. They exile the mirror so they can keep pretending they're whole. Don't take it personally, it's biology. The psyche defends itself from light the way the eyes flinch from the sun. But when the attacks come, remember this. Their anger is a confession. Every insult is an admission that you've touched a nerve they were desperate to protect. Truth doesn't create pain, it only reveals it. You're not their enemy, you're their unhealed reflection. Still, even knowing this doesn't protect you from the ache of being misunderstood. Being awake in a world that sleeps is a lonely assignment. You'll crave someone who speaks the same psychic language, someone whose silence hums at the same frequency as yours. Until then, you'll learn to hold your own company like a prayer. But the story doesn't end in loneliness. It begins there. Because loneliness is the space where false connections die. When you stop settling for half-seeing relationships, something new begins to grow. Discernment. You stop giving energy to people who feed on it. You stop performing understanding for those who only want an audience. You realize that empathy without boundaries is just emotional self-harm disguised as kindness. So you start to protect your perception, not with walls, but with precision. You let fewer people in, but you meet them fully. It's not isolation, it's filtration, a conscious narrowing that saves your soul. From here, a strange calm arrives. You don't need to prove your insight. You don't need to rescue anyone from their illusions. You've learned that truth, forced, becomes violence. So you let others sleep if they must. You keep your awareness like a flame cupped in your palms, not to blind them, but to keep yourself warm. And when someone ready for light approaches, you share it. Not to save them, but to meet them. That's when clarity stops feeling like exile and starts feeling like home. Every person you meet carries a hidden portrait of themselves, one they protect like a fragile secret. When your perception pierces that portrait, they feel naked, even if you've said nothing. Your silence alone becomes confrontation. They sense that you can read the footnotes beneath their smiles, the suppressed envy behind compliments, the resentment stitched inside kindness. You're the mirror, and the mirror is not loved for its honesty. It's loved only when it flatters. The moment it shows what's real, it becomes an enemy. This is the invisible war every awakened person fights. the war between truth and the comfort of those who can't bear it. People respond to mirrors in predictable ways. Some flee, some mock, some try to break the glass. Others attempt to control the reflection, shaping how you see them. They perform virtue, generosity, vulnerability, but all of it is theatre meant to tame your gaze. When they realize they cannot, resentment blooms. You think you're better than me. That's not what you think, it's what they fear. The more clearly you see, the more they accuse you of arrogance, not because you judge them, but because you won't join their blindness. They confuse your detachment for superiority when it's actually self-preservation. But what happens when the mirror turns inward? When you begin seeing the same illusions inside yourself, the small lies, the hunger for approval, the masks you wear to seem less threatening. Awareness spares no one, least of all the one who wields it. The danger of clear sight is that it burns both ways. You start to realize that your perception of others is a reflection of your own unfinished work. Every projection you dissolve in them reveals another hidden corner within you. You're both surgeon and patient, mirror and face. That's where the true purification begins, not through judgment, but through integration. This realization softens you. You stop seeing them and you. You see pain speaking through different disguises. The narcissist's manipulation is just terror dressed as control. The liar's deceit is desperation not to be rejected. Even cruelty is often a twisted form of protection. This doesn't mean you excuse it, but you understand it. And that understanding changes the texture of your presence. You're no longer a mirror that exposes, you become a mirror that accepts. People feel it. They sense that your vision no longer carries the sting of superiority, but the stillness of comprehension. That's when some start to trust you again. They begin to unmask themselves, not out of fear, but relief. Yet even compassion has a cost. When you understand too much, forgiveness becomes addictive. You start excusing everyone, rationalizing every wound, spiritualizing every betrayal. You say, they didn't know better, until you've erased your boundaries in the name of enlightenment. This is the shadow side of empathy. It dissolves the edges that protect your integrity. Awareness without boundaries becomes martyrdom. You bleed understanding until there's nothing left to protect you. Eventually, you learn that real compassion includes the word no. Because sometimes the most loving act is refusal, not to punish, but to preserve what's sacred in you. So you begin to rebuild. You reclaim your energy from every person you tried to heal. You stop letting others' wounds rent space in your nervous system. You start drawing the invisible lines that define who you are and what is not yours. And with each line, the world starts to respect you in ways it never did before. People sense when you're no longer porous. They feel the difference between someone who listens and someone who absorbs. Your calm is no longer a sponge, it's a boundary. That's the beginning of power. The kind of quiet power that doesn't dominate but simply refuses to be invaded. If this resonates, remember, you're not here to save everyone. You're here to understand, to see, to evolve. Truth is your calling, not your punishment. At this stage, something unexpected happens. Attraction. The same people who once avoided your depth now start gravitating toward it. They're drawn to the stillness that radiates from someone who's stopped chasing approval. They sense safety, but also danger. Safety because you won't judge. Danger because you can't be deceived. This is magnetic energy. You become the kind of person who unsettles without trying to. Not through power plays or words, but through presence. You no longer mirror their facade, you mirror their potential. And few things are more intoxicating or frightening than being seen for who you could become. But not everyone can handle that reflection. Some will love you obsessively, others will despise you just as intensely. Both are reactions to the same thing. your refusal to play the old game. The ones who crave authenticity will orbit your light. The ones who need illusion will declare war on it. You learn to tell the difference not by their words but by their calm. Those who can sit in your silence are the ones who can meet you. The rest will fidget, explain, confess, or attack. Awareness turns you into a tuning fork. Who vibrates with you, stays. Who can't will break away. This is the paradox of the mirror. You don't have to say a word to reveal truth. Your existence does it. Your energy exposes the gap between who people are and who they pretend to be. It's why some strangers trust you instantly and others recoil. You're both invitation and warning. And as you accept this duality, your solitude begins to feel less like punishment and more like precision. You're no longer lonely, you're selective. The mirror doesn't chase, it simply reflects. And in that stillness, the world rearranges itself around your clarity. Awareness without discipline is chaos. You see too much, feel too much, understand too much, and it begins to eat you alive. The mistake of the awakened is believing that seeing clearly means acting constantly. You think every distortion you perceive must be corrected, every suffering you sense must be healed. But perception doesn't equal permission. The truth is, you're not meant to fix what doesn't ask to be fixed. Every time you intervene without invitation, you violate the sacred timing of another soul's evolution. Awareness gives you sight, not ownership. And that distinction is the difference between wisdom and torment. You start to realize that the world doesn't need another savior. It needs witnesses. Those who can stand in the presence of pain without rushing to erase it. Those who can let chaos reveal its own order. You've tried to purify the river by jumping into it, but the water only grew muddier, so you step back. You watch. You learn that patience is not passivity, it's precision. The river doesn't need your hands, it needs your trust. This is what the spiritual beginners never understand. Clarity isn't control, it's surrender with awareness intact. How many times have you exhausted yourself trying to rescue people who never asked for rescue? You thought it was love, but it was fear. Fear of witnessing suffering you couldn't manage emotionally. You called it compassion, but it was avoidance in disguise. You weren't saving them, you were protecting yourself from helplessness. Once you see this, your entire history of helping reconfigures. You realize how often your care was control wearing good intentions. And that truth hurts more than betrayal because it dismantles the heroic identity you built around your pain. So you begin to practice a new kind of love, one that allows others to fall without needing to catch them. You start giving people back their lessons. You stop interrupting the necessary friction that life uses to wake them. This love doesn't soothe, it strengthens, it doesn't fix, it witnesses. And in that witnessing, something miraculous happens. People actually begin to heal, not because you saved them, but because your presence stopped feeding their illusion of helplessness. Sometimes, stepping back is the most radical form of intimacy there is. The discipline of distance isn't coldness, it's containment. It's choosing to hold your light in your chest instead of shining it into every darkness you encounter. You stop being addicted to impact. You stop chasing gratitude. You stop proving your worth through other people's transformation. You finally understand that your peace is your contribution. The world doesn't need your interference, it needs your integration. When you carry truth quietly, it becomes magnetic. When you shout it, it becomes noise. Silence in the hands of the wise is instruction. This is where your energy changes. You no longer enter rooms, searching for imbalance to correct. You enter a stillness. Your calm unsettles more effectively than your advice ever could. The more you stop reacting, the more visible the truth becomes around you. People adjust to your frequency without realizing it. That's influence in its purest form, effortless, invisible, honest. You begin to recognize how exhausting the performance of goodness was, the constant need to validate your empathy, to justify your existence through healing others. You put it down like a burden you didn't notice you were carrying. Now, something shifts in your biology. Your nervous system starts to remember what neutrality feels like. You wake up lighter, as if the universe stopped whispering everyone else's pain into your skin. You realize that boundaries aren't walls, they're membranes. They breathe. They let in air, but not poison. This new self doesn't need to announce itself. It simply exists, unbothered by misunderstanding. You stop fearing that distance equals abandonment. It doesn't. It equals respect. Respect for your own frequency, for the lessons others must learn on their own timeline. If you're starting to feel this shift, don't resist it. You're not hardening. You're refining. Awareness without boundaries is fire without a hearth. It burns instead of warms. But the discipline of distance comes with temptation. Once you taste attachment, you might mistake it for superiority. You might start looking down on those still tangled in illusion, forgetting that you were once the same. That arrogance is the ego's last disguise. True awareness doesn't separate. It includes. It sees illusion as part of awakening, ignorance as part of learning. You stop scorning the sleepers. You bless them in their slumber, knowing they'll wake when their dreams turn unbearable. Compassion without attachment, clarity without contempt. That's mastery. And finally, you reach a strange peace. You stop needing the world to change in order for you to rest. You don't close your eyes to avoid the chaos. You simply stop mistaking chaos for failure. The storm outside no longer dictates the weather inside. You understand now that your perception was never the curse. It was your compulsion to act on every truth you saw. When you learn to witness without interference, awareness transforms from burden to art. You become the silent artist of reality, shaping nothing, yet changing everything through your stillness. When you finally stop fighting the world's blindness, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see yourself. For years, your awareness faced outward, scanning others like radar, decoding their emotions, their masks, their motives. But when the storm outside quiets, your gaze turns inward, and what you find there isn't peace, it's debris. Fragments of every feeling you absorbed, every secret you carried, every illusion you held onto in the name of empathy. This is the forgotten part of awakening, cleansing yourself of everything that isn't you. The light you sought in others has been buried under the weight of everyone you tried to save. You start remembering what your own frequency feels like. The silence that isn't absence but presence. The stillness that doesn't mean detachment, but depth. You realize your emotions are no longer hand-me-downs from the collective. They're your own again. That's when clarity transforms from a weapon into wisdom. You no longer use it to dissect, expose, or analyze. You use it to anchor. You become the calm in the chaos instead of the judge of it. You start radiating steadiness instead of consuming confusion. This is the first sign that your awareness is maturing. It no longer feeds on tension, it creates balance. But what does it mean to live like this? To walk through a world built on illusion and still stay kind? It means you become selective, not cynical. You choose your company the way a lighthouse chooses when to shine. You stop explaining your peace to those committed to their storms. You stop arguing with distortion. You realize that not everyone deserves access to your perception. Some people only want to drain it. Protecting your light isn't selfish, it's strategy. Because every time you dim yourself to fit the unready, you betray the clarity that took you years to earn. This new version of you no longer seeks validation for being different. You used to hide your sensitivity, Then you began flaunting it, hoping it would be understood. Now you don't need either. You've outgrown the performance of being profound. You're no longer trying to prove your depth, you're busy living it. You learn that power isn't loud, it's quiet. Confidence isn't explanation, it's embodiment. The awakened don't need recognition, they need resonance. So you speak less, listen more, and begin to recognize a subtle truth. Those meant for you will hear you even in your silence. You once thought strength meant endurance, absorbing more, feeling more, understanding more. But strength isn't expansion, it's containment. It's knowing when to stop carrying. You stop calling exhaustion purpose. You stop confusing burnout with empathy. You start choosing yourself in small ways that feel revolutionary. A conversation left unanswered, a truth left unspoken, a boundary kept intact. It's not detachment, it's devotion to equilibrium. The world doesn't notice this. Shift immediately, but your nervous system does. It exhales for the first time in years, realizing it no longer has to interpret every vibration as a call to duty. And as you grow quieter, something magnetic emerges. People feel your calm before they understand it. They can sense the absence of judgment, the stability of presence, the unspoken permission to be real. This is what true awareness does. It doesn't perform healing, it invites it. It turns space into safety. When you stop trying to awaken others, your very being becomes the doorway through which awakening enters. That's when you understand. Enlightenment isn't about light at all. It's about gravity. The deeper you root into yourself, the more effortlessly others rise around you. But not everyone will meet you here. Some will interpret your serenity as indifference, your boundaries as arrogance, your peace as provocation. Don't defend yourself. The misunderstanding of the unconscious is inevitable. You're not here to convince the blind that light exists. You're here to keep it alive. Every misunderstanding you endure is proof that you've evolved beyond explanation. You no longer translate truth into digestible fragments. You speak the full language of consciousness now, and only those fluent in it will hear you clearly. If you've reached this point, you're part of the few who see without flinching. You're building a life that doesn't depend on illusion. Stay here. This space exists for those who walk through the dark carrying their own light. Now, presence becomes effortless. You stop preparing responses in conversations. You stop managing impressions. Your awareness becomes less like a lens and more like a landscape. Wide, open, quiet. You're no longer obsessed with what others think of you, because you finally understand what you think of you. The self you meet now is clear-eyed, unhurried, and strangely merciful. You no longer need to protect your sensitivity. It protects you. It tells you where not to go, who not to trust, what not to force. For the first time, awareness feels natural, not dramatic. You've turned the very thing that once alienated you into the compass that guides your peace. And maybe this is the final irony of clear seeing. You spend half your life wishing you didn't have it, and the other half realizing it was never meant to burden you, only to refine you. The curse was never the clarity itself. It was your resistance to carrying it gently. Once you stop fighting the gift, it stops cutting you. You were never broken for seeing too much. You were simply becoming the kind of person who could see without bleeding. One day you meet someone who doesn't flinch when you speak the truth. They don't retreat, don't defend, don't look away. Their silence isn't discomfort, it's recognition. You can feel it. The air changes around people like this. The conversation doesn't fill the room. It clears it. There's no need for performance, no need to shrink or translate. You speak in the same unspoken language, the dialect of those who see without judgment. And in that instant, the loneliness you've been carrying begins to loosen. You realize the world is not empty of light. It's just scattered, waiting for reflection. These people are rare, but they exist. They walk quietly, unnoticed by the noise. You can find them in unexpected places. A stranger's glance that lingers in understanding, a sentence in a book that feels like someone wrote it for you, a voice that speaks not to impress, but to remember. They are the other mirrors. They've walked through their own fires and learned to carry them like lanterns. When two of you meet, recognition happens without words. It's not a meeting of minds, it's a meeting of frequencies. And for the first time, you don't feel like the anomaly. You feel like home. But this connection isn't made of fireworks, it's made of gravity. You don't lose yourself in these people, you find yourself more solidly. You don't chase them, and they don't chase you. The bond is quiet, unwavering, born from mutual seeing. There's no need to prove, persuade, or protect. Awareness attracts awareness the way still water reflects the sky. It doesn't try, it just is. These relationships don't inflate you, they stabilize you. You can finally breathe because someone else is breathing the same rare air of consciousness. And from that point, your clarity stops feeling like separation. It becomes contribution. You begin to understand why you were chosen to see. It wasn't to stand above others, but to stand among them differently. Your presence starts changing things subtly. How people speak around you, how truth enters a room, how tension dissolves when you don't react to it. You realize that enlightenment isn't loud. It doesn't need an audience. It transforms quietly, through example, not explanation. You've become the still point around which others reorganize. Without trying, you become permission for honesty. What does it mean to live as permission instead of persuasion? It means you stop pushing truth. You embody it. You let people come to their realizations the way the dawn comes to the city, slowly, gently, unforced. You understand now that change isn't something you cause, it's something you allow. You stop demanding that others wake up and start trusting that those who are meant to will. You've turned from seeker to steward, from the restless observer of illusion to the quiet custodian of awareness. That's when clarity becomes sacred, when it no longer serves your ego, but serves existence itself. You start to move differently through the world. Every gesture slows, every word counts. You no longer rush to correct or convince. The world's chaos becomes a kind of background music, loud, yes, but no longer unbearable. You carry your light not like a torch, but like a pulse. It doesn't need to be seen to be felt. Your calm becomes contagious. Your silence becomes sermon. People sense it long before they understand it. You're no longer trying to teach. You're just being, and your being does the teaching for you. This is the quiet authority of the awakened. It requires nothing, commands everything. But awareness never stops evolving. Even here, in peace, temptation returns. The mind whispers, now that you're calm, you can guide others. But that's the last illusion. To believe the world needs your guidance. It doesn't. It needs your presence. You're not the teacher. You're the atmosphere. Wisdom doesn't announce itself. It saturates. You've gone from reflection to radiation, from clarity that isolates to clarity that integrates. You're no longer trying to protect the light. You've become it. The curse has turned full circle into its blessing. Subscribe if you're ready to stop running from what you already are. Here, we don't chase light. We learn to carry it. If this truth found you, it's because you were already looking with your eyes open. Now imagine it. An entire city of sleepers beginning to stir. Not from alarms, but from silence. Not from noise, but from presence. One by one, windows lighting up as consciousness spreads like dawn. You watch it unfold without claiming it as your doing. Because awakening isn't something you cause, it's something you allow to happen through you. That's the final mastery, to be the bridge, not the builder. To be the sky that holds the storm, not the one that tries to stop the rain. The world will keep sleeping, and that's all right. Some souls need darkness to grow roots before they can reach for light. Your task isn't to wake them, it's to remain awake yourself. Carry your perception like a flame shielded by both hands. Protect it not from the world, but from the urge to prove it. The danger of seeing remains, but so does the beauty, because in a world that prefers to keep its eyes closed, being awake is the most radical form of love there is.